In every step of the design, installation, protection, and maintenance of underground utilities, there are people working diligently and innovatively to reduce damages. All of these people need and deserve to have their stories told, which is what we do here at Planet Underground TV. We'd like to thank our sponsors: Electric Conduit Construction, HBK Engineering, and C-Scan.
So Electric Conduit Construction primarily was out in the western suburbs a lot, for the most part. Within the last few years, we've made our footprint in the city of Chicago, doing a lot of work for different telecommunication companies, cable placements, fiber placement, terminations, fiber splicing, testing, just about any utility that's out there we can do it. We've grown over the last few years. Increasing our labor pool and our workforce, our equipment, just all around have grown.
We're doing a joint project for 4 different companies here. We're putting in 8 4-inch PVC Schedule 40 pipe on Fullerton Avenue. There's a lot of traffic going on out here. We have Lincoln Park Zoo over here. There's a lot of foot traffic. We're right off Lakeshore Drive. There's a lot of cars, a lot of stuff going on, so we also have a crew, 2 crews from Electric Conduit out here. So we've been coordinating with each other throughout the day to make sure we're both getting production done and staying safe. So for this job in particular, we met up probably a couple weeks ago with the project manager and the superintendent. Because a job to this scale with the multiple customers that we have, there's multiple prints for each customer. So we had to go back to paper prints. We do everything through our iPads now, and we have CV for our company where we can electronically get in everything. But just because the project of this size with all the different prints, we had to go back, we had to meet up, we had to walk through. We're running multiple pipes for each customer, so we kind of had all to get on the same page with that just to make sure the pipe configurations were solid before we actually broke ground and put anything in. This is a bigger one out of some of the ones that I've done. This is probably one of the biggest ones we've done in a while as far as the amount of customers that we're running pipe for and how far the job is. It pretty much goes down to Clark Avenue, so it's probably 3 more blocks down. It's a total of 1,500 feet that needs to be trenched with multiple collectors being set all over the place.
When we look at the amount of joint builds that we have done and the amount of joint builds that we may be doing at any given time, we would generally say that there should be more. Joint builds are difficult things to coordinate. It takes a lot of things aligning at once. It takes first of all, the goals of multiple utilities who need to reach the same customers at the same time. It takes those utilities also being able to come together at a financial and a legal basis and be able to agree on the nature of the final installation and how they're going to come together in that installation. Timing is very important. While they may be going for those same customers, their time frames may be very different. A great example of this would be, while you've got the critical utilities such as gas, water, and power, then you have the very necessary utilities that might not be present in every building because there's so many different providers, are the communications providers. They may not know that they're going to service that customer at that time and therefore have no real reason to build to it or expend capital resources getting there. However, within a year, 18 months, 24 months or longer, they definitely do need to get to that customer. And so we generally look at it and say, if we were to do a joint build that is going towards a particular target, and we know we're taking power and we know we're taking water and gas in that direction, how would you accommodate for communications companies that haven't yet made a sale there or have any commitments that they'll get hired for service at that location? And if that was the case, if we were to put in spare conduits or things that would accommodate them in the future, who would pay for that at the outset or in the initial construction?
So we get our locates done through USIC and HBK for gas. We call those in. They have 48 hours to come out and mark all utilities that we are going to be crossing, just so we know what's there. We do pothole all utilities that we will be digging across. It's different right here with the zoo because there's a lot of private utilities coming out that USIC cannot locate. It's private with the zoo, it's private with some of these parks. So they have to come out and mark their own stuff. We have to coordinate with the zoo, coordinate with these private spots that have locates to make sure we get everything marked out so nothing gets hit. So we are running pipes out for future use. Just because it's such a highly congested area, we're gonna put extra pipes in just in case for the future if they want to come in and pick them up. That way they don't gotta be out in the middle of the street. They can pick up and put a manhole or put a quasi box in and run shut for future use.
Well, typically what happens, it's from the ground level where a joint build comes into play. And when I say ground level, I mean during the engineering process. There's a few companies within the city of Chicago that deal with the same customers, and they may have one come to them and say, we want to dig and excavate in this area. And then there's another contract or another utility owner that comes and wants to do it. So the process of going through the OUC and permitting and engineering, there's people that see all these coming in at one, and they'll, a red flag might go up and say, hey, we've had this company, this company, this company, they all want to excavate down this street. Let's put them all together in a joint trench. A lot of the utility owners, they still don't show an interest in a joint trench because of they want to keep that separation between the different utilities. A lot of it has to do with damages, hits. If you have a duct package that's all together and a contractor that hits it can take down multiple carriers at once. Whereas they feel if there's separation, they have a better chance of not getting damaged. Sometimes I do agree with that. However, especially like in the city of Chicago, you're running out of room in the streets, in the sidewalks, in the parkways, and you're limited to where you can go. And there's not always the convenience of being able to have separation between everybody.
I'll use a good example of why it's difficult under our current system. Right now, to pull a permit for any construction, that permit has to be pulled under one single entity's name. And if you have a joint build, you generally have to have a utility who steps up and says, I'm going to be the champion of this joint build because it'll be my permit on it. Therefore, I may be considered on the hook for this thing solely all the way along. That detracts from people wanting to do joint builds because that champion in the beginning might say, yeah, I'll help get this thing started, but I don't want to be solely on the hook for its maintenance and the restoration around it forever. There's other parties involved. So there's definitely a need for increasing education or awareness of what it means for all these utilities to be kind of independent in their installation processes. What it means right now is you may have the power company wanting to come in and put a new line down a street, and then 2 weeks later, as we hear so often, the next utility, and then the next one after that. And so everybody starts to lose faith in the system. The general public starts to think that it's just the city or the municipality being inefficient, when it really has nothing to do with that. It's really coming down to that each utility is independently responsible for maintaining their infrastructure. And they're going to do that at their own time when they need, and not in any particular order or in coordination with anything else. So one thing that a joint build can do to remediate that is mean that generally you're working in a smaller corridor. It's more organized. So if there is multiple digs happening on a street at any given time, they're happening at least now within that same general area of the street. But also I think a joint build can make it such that everybody's coordinating their repairs together as much as possible. There will always be emergencies that happen outside of it, but coordinating their repairs together and in such a manner that it seems more uniform, and it happens, I think, more on an easier to schedule basis.
A lot of the times when we're running pipe, we're only running in a couple, which it does make more sense. If you're gonna have this big of project to put stuff in there for future use, just so you're not coming back and doing the same thing all over again, you know. The project manager for our company will kind of coordinate with all of our customers and let them know what we're going to be doing. I would assume they all coordinate together that we're going to be doing a project. And if people want to get stuff in, now's the time to do it, because we're going to have all this opened up and we're going to be running stuff in.
You know, once in a while, when there's different engineering companies involved, they'll, you know, we might, like Electric Conduit Construction, we may deal with different telecoms, and each telecom has a different engineering firm, and we may see a project coming down the road for company X or utility X, and then this other utility's coming in and they're in the same area, and then at that point we can get them together and see if they would be interested in doing like a joint trench down. It's substantial cost savings for them, especially with restoration, by going in the same ditch.
It is important for these other companies to be communicating when projects like this are being done, because you know the residents in Chicago, they don't want to keep having their streets get ripped up. You know, the city has to come through and repave the streets and redo the sidewalk. Everyone should pretty much be on the same page and kind of coordinate with each other when they're going to do a project to this scale of size, to kind of get everything in at once and kind of do all the restoration stuff after.
The one thing about joint builds, it's a huge cost savings in construction and especially restoration. Restoration costs are so high. Concrete, sidewalk, ADA corners, asphalt restoration. It's so expensive anymore. For a single carrier to be able to handle that cost, it just makes sense for different carriers to get together and share that cost on the restoration. Save them millions of dollars.
In 2008, 2009, Mayor Daley at the time had a large concern about the number of manhole covers that were present in the city of Chicago. And it really came down to a lot of things. I mean, one, it made the streets unpleasant from a tourism perspective, that there was, you know, it was a bumpy ride basically. But probably more so than that, it was the fact that the costs of restoration and repaving were so high, because the equipment had to go around every single cover, and it was really slowing that process down. So he had raised the question of, why are there so many manholes? And we came to the table and talked with him about that and explained kind of the nature of how utilities build independently of each other, that there's really not enough coordination or coming together in terms of joint builds that could help consolidate these systems. And again, it comes back to a lot of that problem of a lot of stars need to align for that to happen. But one of the main things that has to happen is there has to be some municipal sponsorship of that concept. The right-of-way owner can really do a lot to either enable or to actually make that process more difficult. One thing that occurs is assigning ownership of that duct bank or that conduit package or that joint build. A municipality tends to want to be able to say that is one owner. It makes it easier for them. Whereas there may be multiple owners of that, multiple parties responsible for it. So having a way to accurately assign ownership to multiple parties would be one thing that does help enable that. And another thing is for the municipality to encourage that, either through fees or how they work the permits or different methods, I think would be a really positive thing.
You know, here's the thing, when you do a project, you trench down a street, say 200-300 feet for a particular customer. And then 3 months later, you're coming down the exact same street with a different customer. You're running out of room in the street as it is. So if these customers and our clients can get together, collaborate before a project starts and say, hey, in a few months, we're going down that street. You know, let's do a joint build and get them both in at the same time. With the amount of room left in the city of Chicago in the street, that would benefit everybody. You know, it would benefit the customer, it'd benefit us, it'd benefit the city. All the crossings we do for unmarked things, you know, it's over or under the gas main, over or under the water main. We had a ton of unmarked packages out there. We were dealing with the zoo, the park district. There's so many things in the way, you know, and with that amount of pipe in the ground, you know, when you're going under, you're a lot wider. When you're going over, you're a lot shallower. We had to make sure we had all our depths. There was a lot of things in the way out there. So everyone together, we basically had a meeting every morning to talk about how we were going to overcome the obstacles. So that's what we did every day. You know, that's just, you're going back to dig the same thing over and over and over again. If you could do it once and be done, I think that would be a great asset to have.
We've been out here a week so far. This will be 2 weeks after tomorrow. We're running across a lot of obstacles here. There's a lot of unmarked utilities that we're coming across here. At least so far, my part. Like I said, we're going in between stuff, underneath, on top of a bunch of stuff that's not located. Like encasements, I'm finding 4-inch steel pipe, 2-inch steel pipe. Just a bunch of different stuff. Concrete encasements. I don't know if they're abandoned or not. There's some abandoned like sewage we found. Old like storm drains probably, old tile. I know they're abandoned because they're broken and they're all full of clay and stuff, so I know they're not in working use anymore. And yeah, that's just another obstacle. When you first find them though, you think they're live, so you gotta be careful until you follow it and then you'll see it's broken and no good, so. It's time consuming. Why they don't show up on the prints, I don't know, but probably because they're real old and they're abandoned and they're not updated, I'm assuming. I found a few steel pipe that, you know, I don't know what's in them. They could be live, they might be dead, I have no idea, there's no telling, but they're definitely unmarked. And I also found all the marked stuff that they marked is fine. I am coming across a lot of stuff that is unmarked though. Like I said, with all my experience, I know what to look for. I look for, change of ground, sand, clay, whatever. You can tell when there's a trench if you see gravel,
So when we first get to a job, we do a walkthrough with our whole crew, just in case stuff's not marked and we do see things. Obviously, when you've been doing city work for a long time, you start to notice things. If you see something that should be located and it's not, we get an eye out for that. We let our upper management know that we need refreshes to come out to freshen up some of these marks that maybe got missed. And then obviously once we start going, we hand dig around all utilities that we will be crossing. We don't use the machine. We'll rip up the concrete and then we'll do hand digging for that.
I'm basically teaching, I like to lead by example, to be honest with you. I'm not one of those guys, hey, do this, do that, but if they got questions, I'm always here to, answer them, obviously. But if I see something and they'll ask, a lot of times they'll ask me, hey, how'd you know that? I said, follow, let's say you're in a parkway and there's like real soft ground, there's a lot of roots. Well, if there's a trench there, the roots go to the softest spot, so then there's a trench there. So look out for something. Hey, those roots are following a line. Just keep following that root, and sure enough, you'll find utility.
We've always taken a lot of pride in our work because what we do is so tangible. If we can create the best picture of what's going on underground for the companies and the contractors that are going out and use that product to actually install a new line, we're creating efficiency and safety and making their jobs easier. We get to look back on every one of those designs we did and see the end result of our product. And it's very tangible. It's in our power and it's in the water that comes into our homes and it's on our cell phones. And so we always take a lot of pride in being a part of that process and hopefully contributing to the safety and the efficiency of that process. We think that the steps that we've taken to increase the standards for how our designs are put together and how they're used in the field has been a big achievement for us, not only as a company, but personally as the people who work on these projects. One of the greatest things that we ever see is a crew out on the street that starts to slowly get used to working with our drawings, and instead of throwing them in the back of their truck and never picking them up again, you start to see them out on the hood, highlighting them as they cross each utility. And that's one of the greatest feelings for us because it means they're actually using and getting value out of the efforts that we put into it. It's very hard for us to say we ever know 100% where a utility is underground, but if we can start to give them that picture of what's ahead and what's in front of them, then there is a very tangible outcome of a more safe and a more efficient excavation.
Oh, without a doubt we use the prints. I mean, that's the lifeline to the job. without the prints, we have no idea where to put anything. So what we did is we got this joint build up on Fullerton. We got 3 different sets of prints from 3 different customers. We got to overlap them, put them together, make sure all the pipes are correct, the configurations are right. So what we do is we get those prints, we walk the job with the foreman, project manager, customer, make sure everything's in line, make sure everything is where they want it to be. So that's the first step, is combining the 3 sets of prints into one to come up with the joint build. Per the print, it's per the build, that's the design. We need to make sure that we follow that to a T in order to deliver a correct product to the customer. Referring to the joint build, you know, we have multiple pipes in the ground. As we're going through the job and putting the pipe in the ground, we have to continue to mark it with a marker so that the correct pipes stay with the correct customer. So we rise up the correct poles. So it's a lot of tangibles that can go into that. If you screw up that pipe configuration, if you crisscross them, you want every pipe to be good. So following the print, marking down your pipe, keeping everything the same way, that's how you get a job done.
There's a lot of moving parts with this job, so there's a lot. We all meet up every morning. We can't start out here until 9 a.m. because it's a busier street. We don't want traffic to be all congested. There's obviously schools out, there's kids coming into the zoo. So we got to coordinate with each other, make sure everybody's on the same page and knows what's going on, knows what we're going to be crossing. That way everybody, the goal every day is for everybody to get home safe. We don't want anybody, no car accidents, we don't want any pedestrians getting hurt. We keep our work zones secured so no people are walking through. We all just got to try and stay on the same page to keep everybody safe.
And there are places in the city where you could try and build, and I think would either have a very difficult time or would probably abandon the job because of the sheer amount of congestion at that location. There's a few places scattered around the central business district now that I can think of where you literally would not want to try and design a new facility. You could peel back the pavement and it would be almost solid. It's fairly certain you couldn't put a backhoe shovel into the ground, and so everything you'd have to do would be at a minimum by hand, which would be very difficult. So there are definitely areas that we would try to avoid in terms of new installations, and so in the city there are definitely places where that is the case. Do I ever think there's a time when there'll be an entire area you can't build through? Possibly, but it's a long way from now. I think if utilities start coming together and coordinate in terms of either joint build or just even consolidating their positions in one area of the right-of-way, that can definitely relieve things, and also coordination of how abandoned facilities can be used. In other words, you can actually free up a piece of right-of-way that was once used, also could matter.
The only thing you can do with the abandoned stuff, if it's in a duct package, try to find a manhole. You can always try to pull the old cables out. That sometimes helps. But you're still gonna have a duct package there. So really, I mean, a lot of times they reuse those duct packages. If there's an old cable inside, they'll pull them out and fish a new cable in. That's been done many times. I've done it many times. But with the abandoned stuff like sewage and stuff, you know, the city will come in, they'll put a new sewer in. They're not gonna spend the time and the money to take all that old stuff out. So I'm assuming that's why they leave a lot of that stuff in. Hey, who's gonna pay for that? Exactly. These contractors, they get paid to get the job done, and that's it. They ain't got time to, clean up a job and, take other stuff that's, existing there, take it out and, help the next guy out. They're worried about, their job, not the next guy. That's the way it is. That's just human nature, I guess. And, it wouldn't be feasible to do that anyway. They wouldn't make any money that way. They'd probably lose money. I mean, the print shows, whatever line should be underground. Besides that, that's all I could go by. If I'm coming across stuff that's not in that print, I'm not a psychic. I don't know what's under there. And, this stuff could be, 100 years old. I have no idea. And there's a lot of private stuff due to the Lincoln Park Zoo being here. I was told there's a line for a butterfly exhibit. You don't want to hit anything there because then all the butterflies will die. That's what I was told. So I don't, we're being extra careful. I got a great operator, in my opinion, the best we have. We take it easy, and I watch him the whole time, do our job.
I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've worked at a couple different companies. I did do directional drilling, and we have tried to bore blind over some stuff that we thought that we knew depths on, and just thought we can go over the top of it, and have ended up getting into some stuff, and it's not the way to go. It's more time consuming to pothole everything, but as far as keeping everybody safe and avoid stuff like that from happening, take the extra couple minutes or hour or two to pothole everything that you think you're going to be crossing, because underground drilling, you're pretty much rolling the dice. Even with you potholing things, you still never know what's underneath.
The thing that I am fortunate to have, I've been in the field. I've done the work. So I know what it takes to get the work done. And a lot of times you'll get engineering firms, engineers in municipalities, and again, they don't understand what can actually happen if you were to do a blind bore. A couple years ago, I had a job up in the northern suburbs where I had to meet with the engineer before he would allow us to even do the work. And while I was walking it out with him, I described, it was an intersection that was recently done with brick pavers on the ADAs and all that. And as we walked it, you could see the gas and the water and the telecommunications marked out. So we got closer to this newer intersection with the brick pavers, and I was describing to the engineer, we will take these pavers out and reinstall, and what do you got to take those out for? And I'm like, because I don't want to hit that gas there. We have to locate that gas, and we have to clear our tolerance zone before we directional bore. And it took some time to explain to him exactly what could happen. What could happen would be we blind bore, we hit a gas, and your intersection goes up. Or the gas back flows into some house or a business along the street here, and that blows up. And once you explain that kind of stuff to them and the importance of why we expose all of our utilities, he understood, and he allowed, okay, thanks, thank you for explaining that to me. So we got that, and he let us take that up, and we put it all back nice and pretty like he wanted it. So he was very happy with our work up there. So
I think it's the quality of work and the craftsmanship and the employees we have here, from the top to the bottom, from the ownership, from safety, project managers, the foreman, the labor, the operator, superintendents, all of us together collaborate and come up with a plan on the job. We put safety first. Every morning there's a meeting. Everyone discusses what's going to happen throughout the day. We fill out our JSAs. We have our job brief, midday job brief. It's safety first, production second. And when you have a foreman that knows and buys into that, like all of our foremen here at Electric Conduit have done, you end up producing a better product and a better quality of work. We're not rushing them. We want them to come to work and leave work the same way they showed up. And in order to do that, you have to practice safety, preach safety, and be safe. And I think the customers in Chicagoland area have realized that Electric Conduit provides the best product possible, and that's where we're at.